How's it going, everyone? My name is Dieugirl, and welcome back to Book 1, Into the Light. Last time we left off, Tristina had barely escaped recapture by Takama thanks to Besh, his heroine. Now it's time for the answer. What will they do today? This is part 4.3. Tiffany looked down in thought, then looked up. "Study," she said, looking at the others. "What?" asked Ron, a bit disappointed. "Study. Final test thingy's coming," said Tiffany, picking up a defense against the dark arts book out of her book bag. With a resolving groan, the crew sat down to study for their final exams. After a few hours of studying, the group decided to take a break and walk around the castle a bit. "Your English has been getting a lot better, Tiff," said Harry as they walked. Tiffany smiled as Besh gave her a one-armed hug. Ron, however, was looking down a corridor. "Hey," he said, stopping Tiffany and Besh. "You guys hear something?" Tiffany perked her ears towards the hallway, and Besh tilted his ears in the same direction. "Sound like begging," Tiffany said quietly, creeping towards the door. Okay, I'll do it," a voice sobbed. Besh grabbed Tiffany and pulled her into an abandoned classroom across from the door. Harry, Ron, and Hermione followed. The five then peeked out as Quirrell left the classroom, straightening his turban. Besh's brow furrowed as they saw Quirrell leaving. "He's given in. That isn't good." He gestured that they go back into the classroom they'd hidden in, and then, once they were all inside, "Well, it looks like our last defense is gone. We and Fluffy are all that stand in between Snape and the Sorcerer's Stone. But we have finals to study for." He grimaced. "What are we to do, people?" "I would suggest you get out of this classroom," a voice said as they turned to find Severus Snape walking into the room. "This classroom was abandoned for a reason, and that reason was not for students to just come in and do nothing in." "So he didn't overhear us. Good. That would have been a bad thing if he had," Besh thought, and had the presence of mind to look down at the floor and say meekly, "Yes, Professor." He walked out of the classroom, and the other four followed close behind. As he passed Snape, Besh could have sworn he smelled something off about Snape. Not quite right. The five of them headed back to Gryffindor Tower, and Besh said, "Well, we might as well put it out of our heads until after finals, and we can actually focus on this." The other four nodded in agreement, although Harry in particular didn't look too happy about it. Tiffany sighed and nodded, then followed the others back to Gryffindor Tower. Thanking God her textbook had been magically translated to Keeson, she settled down in a corner by the stairs and began to read. Sparky, wake up!" Tiffany's head shot up off her knees, and she looked blearily at Besh. She then looked down to see she had been reading a translated version of A History of Magic.
"Sparky, sorry,"
she mumbled, rubbing her eyes. "It's okay," said Besh, smiling while Hermione shook her head. "It's time for finals anyway. Come on." By the end of that day, Tiffany's brain felt like mush. She spoke mostly in Keeson, not having the mental strength to struggle with English. She looked sideways to see Harry rubbing his scar.
"I've always heard that final exams were frightful, but I found them rather enjoyable," said Hermione happily.
"Speak for yourself," Ron groaned, his necktie hanging sloppily around his robes.
"¿Qué pasa, Harry?"
asked Tiffany, looking to Harry. "It's my scar," Harry groaned, rubbing his scar. "It keeps burning." "It's happened before," said Besh. "Not like this. I think it's a warning. It means danger's coming." Suddenly, Harry stopped and stared at Hagrid's hut. "Oh," he said, looking at a look of understanding washing over his face. "What is it?" asked Besh. Don't you think it's a bit odd?" asked Harry, shifting into a swift walk. Tiffany and Besh easily kept up with him, having trained in Quidditch with Harry, and Hermione and Ron brought up the rear. "Hagrid, who gave you the dragon egg? What do he look like?" Harry asked, coming in to a stop as Hagrid sat on the front steps.
"I don't know. He kept his hood up. You get a lot of funny folk in the Hog's Head."
"You and this stranger, though, you must have talked," said Besh. Hagrid looked down and thought.
"Well, he wanted to know what sort of creatures I looked after. I said, after Fluffy, a dragon's gotta be no problem."
"Stranger interested in Fluffy?" asked Tiffany.
"No, but his friend was,"
said Hagrid, frowning as he tried to remember.
"His friend?"
asked Harry.
"Yep. A fellow walked in and said he'd heard about Fluffy and wanted to know more. I told him, though. I says, the trick with any beast is to know how to calm him. Take Fluffy, for example. Just play him a bit of music and he goes straight to sleep."
With that, Tiffany, Besh, Harry, Ron, and Hermione rushed towards Professor McGonagall's office, racing into the Transfiguration classroom. Harry nearly bowled over Professor McGonagall's desk.
"We have to see Professor Dumbledore immediately."
"I'm afraid Professor Dumbledore is not here. He received an urgent owl from the Ministry of Magic and left immediately for London," said Professor McGonagall, her face twisted in confusion.
Professor, we have to talk to him. This is about the Sorcerer's Stone,"
Besh argued. Whatever Professor McGonagall was expecting, it obviously wasn't that.
"How do you know? Someone's going to try and steal it," said Harry.
"I don't know how you four found out about the stone, but I assure you it is perfectly well protected. Now, would you go back to your dormitories? Quietly." Harry sighed, Tristina's ears drooped, and Besh shook his head, and the five left the Transfiguration classroom defeated. "Those weren't strangers Hagrid met in the village. It must have been Snape and Takama, which means that both of them know how to get past Fluffy," said Harry, stopping to talk outside the classroom.
"And Dumbledore gone,"
began Tiffany.
"Good afternoon."
Professor Snape had crept up behind them while Tiffany had been talking. Harry, Hermione, Besh, and Tiffany looked at Snape. Ron just stood there, rigid with fear.
"Now what would 5 young Gryffindors, such as yourselves, be doing inside on a day like this?" asked Snape.
We were just,"
stammered Hermione.
"You want to be careful. People will think you're—"
He paused. Both Harry and Tristina were glaring at him. Besh was actually snarling and baring his teeth.
"Up to something,"
he said in a suddenly confused tone. Turning, Snape left the four and whisked down the hall, his cape billowing behind him.
"Bastardo,"
Tristina growled when he was out of hearing. Besh, knowing the translation, gave a grim smile.
"Now what do we do?"
asked Hermione. "We go down the trapdoor," said Harry. "Tonight." "Okay, I'll reveal the first room of the final parts of the series next week. Thank you all so much for watching. If you liked the video and the story, please like and comment down below. I really do appreciate it. Take care of each other. God bless you all. And I'll see y'all later. Ooh, getting near the end, folks. It's getting good. It's been good.